You're about to witness the story and the sinking process of the Titanic. We'll see the moment of collision from inside the ship, take a look at the actual iceberg that sank the Titanic and the marks it left on the ship. Then we'll learn what those who fell into the water experienced through an experiment, and we'll pursue the truth. The sound you just heard was the distress signal sent from the Titanic. The calls for help were being transmitted via telegraph in Morse code to other ships. The Titanic had begun to sink slowly. At the telegraph machine was a young man named Jack Phillips, only 25 years old. He remained at his post until the communication room was submerged underwater. He acted heroically until the very end, but unfortunately, none of his efforts produced results. The Titanic would not be found until 73 years after it sank, and everything would begin again with the discovery of the wreck, the mysterious story of the Titanic. It all started many years ago in 1912, 111 years ago. Newspapers at the time published bold headlines, "Titanic to make its maiden voyage." Pictures of the ship and ticket prices were also included in the papers. The story of the Titanic was actually born out of a challenge. Transatlantic passenger travel was extremely lucrative and innovative, with companies competing to transport wealthy travelers and immigrants. Especially two companies were in fierce rivalry. The White Star Line decided to build two ships that would break records while crossing the Atlantic. But rather than building fast ships, they chose another route. In 1908, they formed a workforce, mostly made up of Irish laborers, to construct a revolutionary passenger ship, the biggest, most luxurious, and most comfortable ship ever built. Their motto was essentially, "We may not be fast, but who wants to travel across the ocean while vomiting?" Their goal was to become a dominant force in transatlantic travel within 5 years. Eventually, RMS Olympic was launched, a massive ship weighing 45,000 tons and capable of carrying over 1,000 passengers. But soon the company would unveil its crown jewel, RMS Titanic. The Titanic was built by about 14,000 workers. On the day it was launched, over 200,000 people gathered to witness it. People who saw it being launched said it felt like the Earth itself was moving, not a ship. To people of that time, it was a colossal vessel. Just the anchors of the Titanic weighed 15 tons. Its interior was decorated with the most luxurious and expensive items. Some critics believed the money should have been spent on technology instead of showy decor, as other companies were already building more maneuverable four-propeller ships. But the White Star Line did not aim for cutting-edge technology. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set off from England on its maiden voyage to New York under the command of Captain Smith. It would first stop at the French port of Cherbourg, then at Queenstown, now Cobh, Ireland, and finally head to New York. Before leaving the port, operators were warned of icebergs along the southern route, routine alerts for Atlantic crossings. At 9:30 p.m., a ship named Mesaba, ahead of the Titanic, reported large icebergs nearby. Though the message was received by the communication officers Phillips and Harold, it was never passed to the captain. They were busy relaying personal messages from first-class passengers to their contacts in New York, which was a paid service. The weather turned colder suddenly, as if the breath of death was in the air. The sea was calm like a sheet of glass. On the Titanic, there was an area called the Crow's Nest for lookouts. 2 lookouts worked in shifts, rotating every 2 hours. As midnight approached, the Titanic was sailing south of the Grand Banks. One of the lookouts saw something ahead, hard to make out in the dark, but it was an iceberg. Frederick Fleet rang the ship's bell 3 times and called the bridge. First Officer Murdoch gave the order, "Hard starboard." Although the ship's speed was only 40 kilometers per hour, its massive size made it impossible to turn quickly. Just 37 seconds later, at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic scraped along the starboard side of the iceberg. The ice tore into the ship like a razor, buckling parts of the hull. Rivets popped, and 5 compartments began to flood. Captain Smith called the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, to assess the damage. When Thomas checked the compartments, his worst fear had come true. 5 compartments were flooding, 400 tons of water per minute. The ship was doomed. All they could do was evacuate. The captain announced that women and children would board lifeboats first. Passengers were woken and told to abandon ship. Panic spread. A distress call was sent out. During the voyage, the telegraph operators focused on paid messages from first-class passengers. Warnings from other ships, such as the SS Californian, were ignored. Earlier that day, Californian had stopped due to ice and planned to stay put overnight. Operator Evans had warned the Titanic but was rudely told, "Shut up, I'm working," by Phillips. Eventually, Captain Smith ordered them to send out an emergency call. They could reach ships within a 400-mile range. The closest ship, the Californian, only 32 kilometers away, did not respond. Another ship replied but was too far and asked them to contact a closer vessel. Then came Hope. The Carpathia responded and set out to help, but it would take 4 hours to arrive, while the Titanic had only 2 hours left. By then, the bow was underwater and the stern was rising. At 1:15 a.m., an officer on the Californian saw flares from the Titanic and reported them. Captain Stanley Lord asked if they were distress signals but didn't act. The confusion was partly due to unclear maritime regulations on flare colors. He ordered continued observation and returned to sleep. At 1:50 a.m., more flares were seen. At 2:15 a.m., the Titanic disappeared from view. By 5:30 a.m., Californian's operator tried to reach Phillips, unaware that he had perished in the depths of the Atlantic. The Californian had been so close but failed to help due to a negligent captain and miscommunication. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic sank completely. Some survivors floated on debris. That's when the real suffering began. Dr. Mike, a survival expert, recreated what people might have endured in the freezing waters. The Atlantic water temperature was simulated at 12 degrees Celsius, normally closer to 6 degrees Celsius. A volunteer entered the cold water. The sudden temperature drop triggered involuntary shivering. After 20 minutes, the volunteer began trembling violently. Thermal imaging showed drastic heat loss. Dexterity dropped by 60%, strength by 40%. Titanic passengers who fell into the ocean likely died within 30 minutes, a slow, painful death. So why did the Titanic sink so easily? Was it due to cheap materials? The ship used iron rivets in some sections, especially at the bow. Though strong in tests, these rivets were vulnerable to side scraping. As the Titanic grazed the iceberg, protruding mushroom-shaped rivets were sheared off, opening a 9-meter-long gap in the hull. If the Titanic had hit the iceberg head-on, it likely wouldn't have sunk. Other factors included the weather, no moon, an unusually calm sea, and atmospheric refraction, a cold water mirage, may have made the iceberg harder to detect. Even the Labrador Current, which breaks off icebergs from Greenland and carries them southward, played a role. The iceberg that hit the Titanic had likely been traveling for 300 days, originating from snow that fell thousands of years ago. At 5:30 a.m., daylight revealed the destruction. Around 1,500 people, mostly lower-class men, perished. Captain Smith, on his final voyage before retirement, was among them. Just 3 hours earlier, families had been together, talking, putting children to bed. By morning, many parents had watched helplessly as their children slipped away into the icy sea. Some women were widowed, some children were orphaned. No survivor would ever forget that night. And behind this brief story of the Titanic lies many more unknowns. In the next part, we'll look at Lord Mersey's reports, new experiments, and shocking images from the wreck. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss part 2.